Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome for the new episode with Apostles for Jesus. Today we have Dr. Jenny Constantine, and she will be with us very soon. And the subject of today is the Transfiguration of our Lord Jesus Christ. It's an important subject, and I wish everybody to listen today because we will learn a lot of facts, a lot of information that we didn't know before. Also, we have in the studio, we have Karam and Dr. Adnan. Welcome and happy evening today, Dr. Adnan.
Uh, Good evening, everybody, and I hope you have a blessed fast during the season before the feast of the Dormition of Our Lady, the Mother of God. As Lay said, today is an important feast and occasion and subject we will talk about, the Transfiguration of our Lord Jesus Christ on Mount Tabor. And the Transfiguration is the last feast we celebrate that belongs to our Master during the ecclesiastical year that will end at the end of this month. This year or every ecclesiastical year will end with the Feast of the Transfiguration and also the Feast of the Dormition. So today we'll talk about the Feast of the Transfiguration by Dr. Jeannie, and hopefully one time we will talk in a different episode about the Feast of the Dormition of Our Lady, the Mother of God. Karam?
Thank you, Dr. Adnan. As they mentioned, today we have like very important episode. I want everyone to share our episode. We will answer very important question. Was the Transfiguration a vision or did it truly happen? Many people they don't believe what happened on that day, and we will try to explain everything with Dr. Jenny. The other important question we will answer is, why was Jesus transfigured? What does this mean for us today and for all the generations that lived all of this time? And Leith, did Dr. Jenny joined us?
Yes. Hi, Dr. Jenny. How are you?
Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Good.
Good
Thank you.
evening. We were worried about you.
Yeah, I was trying to get dinner on the table and get everything ready for the men who live with me so
Yeah,
I could
that's
come and sit with you because it's 6 o'clock in the evening here. It's the dinner hour.
Oh,
yeah, that's
Exactly.
good.
So I was scrambling. Okay. But yes, I'm here. I will always be here. I don't usually, I don't think I've ever not shown up for something. So don't worry
yeah.
about me.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Jenny, let's start our talk as usual with the most important question. Was the Transfiguration a vision or did it truly happen?
That's a very good question. And it truly happened, but not in the way that we sort of imagine. And so that's why when people say, well, it's a vision, I'm not exactly sure what they mean. If they mean that it was something that they imagined, then that's not true. But it really happened. But what they saw, they didn't see or experience something that was of this world, that was physical. What they experienced was something of the divine. So maybe that's why people think of it as something that was a vision in their minds or something like that. But no, we would affirm that the transfiguration really happened. And I think it's wonderful that you are choosing to discuss this. It is one of the more enigmatic, one of the more puzzling episodes from the life of Christ, but it's very important in Orthodox Christianity. And I think that this feast, along with the Epiphany, is only celebrated by the Orthodox. Even the Catholic Church doesn't have a Feast of the Transfiguration, and they don't really celebrate Epiphany. They say they do, but it's really January 6th for them. They celebrate the three wise men coming to visit the baby Jesus. They don't recognize the theological importance of these events. Very important. And they were important in the early church. That's why we, Orthodox Christians, continue to commemorate these events and talk about them like we're doing tonight.
Great. Dr. Adnan, do you have any question?
No, actually, I don't know if Dr. Jeannie, you would like to summarize the event of the Transfiguration to the
Oh,
audience.
that's a
So
really
what
good,
happened before
good
we talk
question.
about it in
Yes,
details?
yes, yes. Well, the Lord told the disciples that he was going to Jerusalem and he was going to be crucified. And several days later, he took Peter, James, and John up to the top of a mountain. And while he was standing there, he was, it says, transfigured in front of their eyes before them. And they saw him change. His face became dazzlingly bright, like the sun, brighter than the sun, and his clothes became dazzlingly white, whiter than snow. And next to him, standing on either side of him, were Moses and Elijah, and they were talking about his exodus, his leaving, his departure. And the sight was so impactful for Peter, James, and John that they fell to their faces and they couldn't really comprehend what they were seeing. But the Lord was talking with with Moses and Elijah. And then as this was happening, a cloud came on top of the mountain and enveloped them, and the voice in the mountain, the voice in the cloud said, "This is my beloved son. Hear him," or listen to him. And then Peter also said, "Well, God, Jesus, it's good that we're here. Let's build 3 booths for you, you and Moses and Elijah." And then as he was speaking, this is when the cloud came. And then everything, when they looked up, they fell on their faces. And when they looked up, Jesus was standing there and everything was back to normal, we could say. So that's kind of the summary of what happened. Would have been better if I had read it from the scriptures, I suppose. I'm sorry, I didn't think to do that. I assumed that would happen. So that's what happened. So there are a lot of questions that this raises. So we mentioned that this was an actual event. It was witnessed by 3 people, Peter, James, and John, who experienced something very, very profound. So I'll leave it to you to ask the next question.
Okay. You said in the beginning that this is very important feast and it's very important thing that's happened. Why it is important? What is the importance of the Transfiguration?
Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, in terms of what it revealed about Christ, that's why this is very important that it's not a vision, but reality. Jesus Christ is both God and man. So as he was walking around on earth, he looked like an ordinary human being. Obviously, he had powers far beyond those of an ordinary human, but he looked in his ordinary manner, dress, his physical body, just like any one of us. And this was a revelation of his divinity. This was as though you could take off his humanity, not that we separate the humanity from the divinity, but as though they were able to see the divinity that was being covered by the flesh. Okay, so what they saw was Jesus, Jesus truly is. So theologically speaking, that's very important. But also the way it describes what he truly is in his divinity, something so splendid, so remarkable, so amazing that they were overcome and they fell on their faces because of the brightness of his glory. So he revealed his nature as God, and the brightness of the divinity, the presence of God was truly present in the person of Jesus Christ. So this event is very important. Like the baptism, it reveals who Jesus really is as the Son of God, but it's also kind of linked to the resurrection because it reveals not just about the resurrection of Jesus, but it reveals for us what kind of glory we will participate in with God in the kingdom of heaven. So this little glimpse that they had of who Christ truly is, and we would say the glory of God in the person of Jesus Christ, is something that we will share. That's why it's important theologically. Because what is the next life about? It's participation in the life of God. We are also told in the scriptures that we will be transformed. We will be transfigured, that this body that we have will be transfigured into something glorious. In the twinkling of an eye, says St. Paul, everything will be changed. So it's a little foretaste of the next life for us also. See what I mean? That's why it's important theologically. So, sometimes we get very immature and very carnal notions about the next life. People think of it like a beautiful place, like a park, or someplace where they're going to be with their dog, or something like this. It's nothing like this life. It's beyond any comprehension, anything we can comprehend in this life, in the splendor and the magnificence, in the transformation of the human person, because it's taking us back to what we were originally in paradise, what Adam and Eve were before the fall. So it's important for our understanding of the next life, we could say, in that respect.
Dr. Adnan, if you have anything.
No, not at all. I just want to say something. She mentioned Dr. Eugenia very quickly. He showed them a glimpse of his divinity when he shone with the bright light. And
Yes.
just imagine, and as it is mentioned that he is always God and man. He is always full God and full man. But imagine how God incarnate, or Jesus Christ, hid his divinity all the time from us in order to be with us, in order for us to see him, to talk to him, to communicate with him, except in certain times or certain minutes or seconds, he just showed us his divinity at a glimpse, as far as the disciples tolerated, because they could not bear the fullness of his divinity, otherwise they will be perished.
That's right.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Very good. That's exactly right. So we say in the hymn of the day for the Transfiguration, you were transfigured on the mountain, O Christ God, showing to your disciples your glory as much as they could bear, which was very, very little. So what he showed them was so minuscule compared to what he truly is. But that was overwhelming to them. And it would be for us too. But they were capable of comprehending and experiencing just a tiny, tiny foretaste of what he really is.
Tom, do you have another question, or I have another question?
I think like after they saw him, Jesus asked them not to tell anyone.
That's right.
Okay, so
That's
why
right.
why he told them do not tell anyone?
Until after his resurrection. He said, don't tell anybody until after the resurrection. This was not something for everybody to know. I think that it was important for them, these three. Why just these three? Obviously, he was closer to them and they were more capable of comprehending or experiencing it or seeing it, because again, it's not that they saw something with their physical eyes, but that they were prepared spiritually to experience this, because the same light that we have that was shown on Mount Tabor is something that some saints of the church have also experienced. We call that the uncreated light. It's a direct experience of God. I think the reason is because he wasn't, the others were not prepared for that. And he only chose those three because they must have been at a higher spiritual level than the others, so that they were able to experience that. And it gave them, prior to his crucifixion, some assurance of his divinity, because what they were going to experience in that whole period on Good Friday, when he was going through his suffering, it was very traumatic for them. And they needed to have this knowledge that he died on the cross willingly, that he allowed himself to be arrested. He allowed himself to be crucified. Not that he was a victim of circumstances and had no control, but that little glimpse of his divinity showed them that this was the case, that he died willingly. So I think that it's easier for us today because we're looking at it, knowing everything that happened, but they had to process all of these things. And I think that was extremely difficult for them because the crucifixion was very traumatic for them. I don't think that they were saying, yeah, but we saw Jesus transfigured on the mountain. How was he arrested? They still were relating to Jesus in a way that they did not have a full understanding of who he was, even though they had that little experience. So that was helpful to them. That was supposed to give them some kind of assurance and some kind of support, but it was not enough to really give them a complete understanding of who Christ was and why he came, even though he tried to explain it.
Yeah, I think he explained everything. He told them about his passions,
Yes.
what will happen.
Yes.
So he prepared them because they know his glory. So don't be surprised. This is what will happen. Dr. Jenny, there is, while you talking, something like clicked in my mind. There is very important thing that Jesus did while we looking at him, showing his glory. He started with the praying. Nowadays, like
He went upstairs to pray, yeah.
exactly, like, but
Yes,
I feel
yes,
we
yes,
need
yes,
to pray
yes.
a lot to show the glory of God inside
Yes.
us. We are far away from praying. Like
Yes,
this is
yes,
also like if Jesus, the Lord, he's praying.
yes,
How about us? We don't do that. Yeah, but even like I pray 15 minutes, 20 minutes a day. This is completely not
nothing.
enough. So
Yeah,
what do you
yeah.
think
Yes,
about
yes,
this
yes.
thing for in our life? How this will reflect in our life?
Well, I think you're right that he, first of all, he was giving us an example to pray. The scriptures often mention that he went up to a mountain to pray. He tried to get away, to have quiet so that he could pray. And that's kind of important. I'm glad you're bringing that up because we don't really seek solitude very often in our lives. We're doing the opposite. We're tending to fill the quiet times in our lives with social media, with television, with music. There's always something going on. And this definitely interrupts our ability to commune with God, which we should be doing on a more frequent basis. You're absolutely right. So I think I mean, there's who can argue with that we should be praying more
Yeah,
and just thinking about God. It doesn't mean that we have to spend hours on our knees or in a chapel or something, but that we should try to train ourselves to think of God frequently during the day, saying the Jesus prayer or some other short prayer. And we just don't do that. We don't.
yes,
We face little challenges in our life, sometimes health issues or sometimes little frustrations, and our first impulse is to call the doctor, to call a mechanic, to call somebody. Our first impulse is never to pray. It's almost always to try to do it ourselves, to fix it ourselves, and that's why we're far from God. So thanks for that observation. You're correct.
thank you. So if we need to understand the transfiguration in deep, we really need like not only this lecture for 1 hour or 2 hours, whatever. We need like to pray a lot to understand these secrets. I
Yeah.
think this is the most
Yeah.
important thing. This will help. Our lectures will help, but
Yes.
the core of the event need to be a lot of prayers to understand that event.
Right, but we have to also understand that this is a mystery, that this was a profound experience that was shared by three people, witnessed by just three people. And this is given to us, to the church. The witness of the apostles was given, they were allowed to experience this so that they could tell us about it and the church would know about it. Jesus did not become the Son of God after the crucifixion or because of the resurrection or something, that his divinity is eternal. He was always that. So we know this. So this was something that was helpful to them. I think it's good for us to meditate on this and bring out the lessons, like you mentioned, that he went to the mountain to pray and we need to pray more often. But I don't know that will ever comprehend it. There are so many questions about the event itself that we don't even know, we can't explain. Like why Elijah and Moses were there, you know. So that's I mean, they're there. We can say, what does it mean that they were there? But why those two and not somebody else? This is a question that has been debated ever since the event. And so people have ideas and they bring out theories, but there's no answer or explanation for these things. These are great mysteries. There's a point at which the mind has to be allowed to let go. We have to let go of our human reasoning and turn more toward our soul and our spirituality. Maybe that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Dr. Adnan, do you have anything?
Okay, as you said, Dr. Jeannie, since Christ chose Elijah and Moses, that means there is a purpose behind his choice. So the proper answer is not why he chose these two instead of somebody else, as if we are questioning his choice. The proper answer is, what does Elijah mean and what does Moses mean? What is the message
Yes.
Christ wants to tell us or to convey to us by choosing Elijah and Moses instead of, oh, why he did not choose this or that instead?
Isaiah
And
or
that's
somebody.
very important.
Well,
Or
yeah,
somebody else,
that's
exactly.
right. But because we don't know why, we can never answer the question of why these two, but there must be a reason, but that is not explained. And maybe the disciples didn't ask him. We don't know. So we really don't know. So why these two? So many different answers have been given to this question, and I'll just give you a few of them. First of all, both Moses and Elijah had experiences with God on Mount Sinai. So they have that sort of thing in common. I don't think that's the strongest answer. Others say a more typical answer is that Jesus was the fulfillment of the law and the prophets, and Moses represents the law and Elijah represents the prophets. Both of those two figures are also associated with the end times, with the coming of the Messianic age. And Chrysostom talks a lot about this, about the Transfiguration as pointing to what will happen to us in the next life. So a prophet like Moses foretold that a prophet like him, or a prophet greater than him, would come, and that's Jesus. And of course, Elijah was the forerunner, was supposed to come back and at the end times. So some people say that this is the reason. But also that Moses, of course, Jesus was accused by the Jews of violating the law of Moses. And here's Moses talking to Jesus. So that doesn't seem to be a problem. Jesus is not opposed to Moses, and Moses is not opposed to Jesus. The same thing with Elijah, that Jesus was somehow violating the prophecies. But the presence of Moses and Elijah support the validity of the ministry of Christ. We could say that. And also, they show that Jesus was not opposed either to the law or the prophets. So those are some of the explanations that are given for the meaning of the presence. Yes, go ahead.
May I add one more?
Sure thing. Absolutely.
Moses represents the dead, and Elijah represents the living. And Jesus is the Lord of everybody, the dead and the living as well.
That could be true because Elijah hasn't died yet, right? So, I mean, there are many different interpretations, but we cannot be certain. But both Moses and Elijah are standing there when the voice says, "This is my beloved son." He doesn't say, "These are my beloved sons." So clearly, and Jesus is flanked by Moses and Elijah, that means he's the most important person. He's more important. So think about how Moses was so important to the Jews, still is extremely important to the Jews, and yet he's not the Son of God. Jesus is the Son of God. And Elijah also representing this zeal for God. Remember, he was the one who was he felt like he was the only faithful person left in Israel, that everybody else had gone over to the worship of other gods. And he's the one that had that big contest with the priests of Baal. So he's a very formidable figure in the section. People say, well, he's not in the book of prophets. Yes, he is. For the Jews consider that where Elijah is in those books, it's, to us, we would call those, the book of Kings or Kingdoms. But for the Jews, that's in the section that they call prophets. So he's representative of the zeal of the prophets, of the devotion of the prophets, who wouldn't be devoted to Jesus if he was a false prophet. We could say that. So that is also a meaning. And you know what? Maybe there are multiple meanings. It doesn't mean that there's just one right answer to this question. But it is good for us to be thinking about it and coming up with and pondering the meaning of this. So I like what you said.
Yes,
Dr. Adnan, Dr. Ginny, I have one question. I need just a clarification about, you said Elijah, he didn't die. So,
Right.
yeah, so he I think he died, but his body is not like Jesus. But I need like clarification.
Well,
About,
he
did
was
he
taken
die
up to
or
heaven
not?
in a fiery chariot. He was still alive, so he didn't die. There are two people in the Bible whose death is not told. One of them is Enoch, and the other one is Elijah. So that's why Elijah is supposed to come back before the end times. He's probably one of those two witnesses in the book of Revelation, because everybody has to die, but he hasn't died yet. But that's the understanding. That's always been the understanding of the church. I've never read anybody say that Elijah died. He was taken alive into heaven. So
Okay, Dr. Adnan, do you have?
we don't wanna go through this. This is a big debate, I think.
Well,
is it a big debate?
I want.
Yeah, there is some.
Yes, I don't.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
Yeah,
doctor.
there are some
I
people
wasn't
who,
aware that there was a
know,
debate.
Yes, doctor.
Go
Yes,
ahead.
Dr.
there are
Adnan.
some people. No, there are some
Go
people with
ahead.
different opinion, because, as you said, Dr. Jean, everybody has to die. There is no exception to the rule, except on the day of the judgment, the final day, the people who did not die
Right.
before when Christ comes, so they will not die. But
Right.
anyway,
Right.
Elijah, in the conscience of the church, is
Yes.
a living prophet. He is a living prophet, and that's why he is called, like, he represents the living. But did he die or he did not die? Saint Gregory Palamas, he says yes, he did die. No one did not die. No one cannot die. Everybody, as you said, everybody should die. But
Okay.
the question, some people might argue, okay, he will die, but not now at the end of the, sometimes
Yeah.
later on, which, what do you mean sometimes later? Where is he now? He is in heaven. Which heaven he is? Because heaven, anyway, so we don't want to talk to go into that discussion, which is
Okay.
not
All right.
very related.
Different
But
subject. This
I
is
know.
different subject.
I have to look that
I
up.
want just
I was not aware that Gregory Palamas said that he did die.
actually the
I'm
Greek,
not.
yeah. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Greek text says as if he went into heaven, or up.
Yeah.
About Elijah. But anyway, I want just to mention
Okay.
something that
Well, excuse me
I
one
think
second
it
then.
is.
Wait. Okay. Then what? How can he represent the living if he died?
Because people did not see him dead. Moses died and he was buried. For the people, they did
Yeah.
not see Elijah dead. That's why he's still in their conscience, in their mind, in their imagination. He is a living person, or he is alive still. That's
Okay.
why he
All right.
represents the living. And I think that Saint
Okay.
John of Damascus mentioned the same thing when he talks in his homily about transfiguration. But again,
Okay.
that's not like very important to say whether he died on that day or he died at a later date. But of course, no one can escape death. If Christ died, if his mother died, no one can escape death. Now, I
Well,
want to
Christ
mention
could have
something that
escaped death, except that
who?
Christ. I don't mean to interrupt, but Christ could have escaped death. He's the only one,
Oh,
right?
I know.
Because
Of
he
course, he
chose
could escape
willingly
this, but
to
he did
die.
not. He
Right. He
chose not.
chose
He
to die.
chose to
He's the
die.
only human person. He's the only one who chose to die. He died because he chose it.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
Exactly.
right.
Yeah,
Correct.
but
Yeah.
we talk
Okay.
about human beings. Christ is
Yes. Yes.
different. I want to say something about like a point of contemplation or pondering or to
Okay.
think about. Now, Christ on the day of Transfiguration, he showed a glimpse. He showed his disciples a glimpse of his divinity.
Yes.
And as we said, that this divinity or this light that shone, it is his energy, his divine energy, or his divine uncreated
Yes. Yes.
light.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
light was hidden behind his human nature all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that
Yes.
the uncircumscribed, the unlimited was hidden
Yeah.
before something
Yeah.
circumscribed and something limited. The all holy and the all powerful, the almighty was hidden behind a human nature that is definite and that is limited. Not only this,
Yeah.
this transfiguration light is always inside the Christ, or always has been inside the Christ, because it is
Mm-hmm.
his own divinity. So when Christ
Yeah.
was among people preaching and teaching, and even when he doing miracles, he always had this light inside him but not visible. The only people who could feel this light, or who could um, get some benefit from this light, the people who touched him or who approached him with faith. And we have several examples, like the woman with the issue of blood, when Jesus told the people around him, who touched me, and they
That's
told him,
it.
do you see all the crowd is pressing upon you, and you are
Yes.
asking who
Yes.
touched you? Of course. He said, no.
Yeah.
One touched me in a way that I felt a power coming out
The
of me,
power
because she
flow out
touched
of
him.
it. Yes.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So she received that power that was hidden in Christ. The people who touched Christ did not have this power, or did not reach this power, because they lacked the faith. Now, same thing when we take Holy Communion, which is his body and his blood. This Holy
That's right.
Communion is
Very
united with
good.
Christ himself. And the light
Yes.
of the Transfiguration is in the cup and the Holy Communion. We don't see it because of our weakness. He
That's
conceals
right.
his divinity, he conceals his life, his light, because of our weakness, of our nature's weakness. But the
Mm-hmm.
people who approach the Holy Communion with faith will feel the warmth of this light. And some people saw the light physically, because
Yes.
Christ allowed them or gave them this
That's
favor.
right.
So just I
That's
wanted
right.
to mention this, just to something to think about that. And even in the icons, all the icons have some kind of divine glory. We don't see it because
Yes.
of our weakness. But people
That's
who
right.
approach the icon with faith and asking for something, and they get an answer, whether it is an answer to a prayer, or answer to a miracle, or to a weakness, because they receive whatever in the icon, the glory or the grace of God.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's many people ask us, like, especially from the out of the faith, like outside the Christianity, let's say, and they are wondering, I mean, how can you believe of God can born from a woman? How can you believe
Yes.
of
Yes.
God can hide or can be like a man and walk like a man? How can you believe on this? So we asked them, do you think God can do everything? Do you think he can
Yeah.
do that? They say, well, we don't know. You say, okay, if you don't know, then you don't believe that God can do
God can
everything.
do everything. That's
So,
right.
so they're acting like they believe God can do everything, but they don't want to believe on this thing particularly because it's
Exactly.
not
Well,
fit them, it's not fit their
that's right.
belief, and that's a problem because they don't believe God can love them this much
Yes.
to become a
That's
man and
right.
to die on the cross for
Yes.
them. They can't believe this. They can't believe this
Yes.
big love that the human nature, the human brain cannot understand. Cannot understand. How
Comprehend.
come
Cannot comprehend.
somebody he has no sin, he has nothing, and die for somebody else? He is sinner, he is bad, and he don't love him. He don't love God that he come in and die for him. So this is the human nature refusal of God's work, and has to be changed by us, by who believe on this. We have to go and preach and
Yeah.
say what God's love
Yes.
is and how we can reach them to understand this big love.
I think that's beautiful. And while you were talking, it reminded me of when the Pharisees came to Jesus and they said, "By what authority do you do these things? Who gave you this authority?" And he said to them, "I will answer you if you tell me by what authority John baptized." And they said, "Well, we don't really," they talked amongst themselves. They didn't know how to answer him because they knew that if they said, well, he had God's authority to baptize, then Jesus would have said, well, why did you oppose him? But at the same time, they didn't want to say he didn't have authority to baptize. It didn't come from God because the people all regarded John as a prophet. So they did not want, so they said, we don't know. That was their answer. The same one that you said people say to you, they don't want to give the answer that they really believe. The truth is they don't believe it's possible. It doesn't fit with their conception, so they are not giving you an honest answer. So we can try, and we should speak about these things, but primarily from the perspective that you mentioned, which is the love of God. The greatest mystery is that mystery of the incarnation. And that was difficult for people to accept. Why would God become a human being, especially to be an ordinary human being, to live an ordinary life, to be born not in wealth and privilege, but to be born as a poor person in a obscure village, to suffer and to die on the cross? Why would God do that? So if you can't accept the love of God, then it's almost impossible for you to accept the idea of the incarnation. But once you are able to accept that, everything else makes sense. And the person's inner mind is also transformed. As we speak about the transfiguration, we have to transform our minds. But as long as we leave that barricade up, so whether it's a Muslim or whether it's a Jew saying this is impossible, then they will never comprehend, and they are unreachable. Okay, I'm not saying that to discourage you, but I think that we have to recognize what we're dealing with, that people are unwilling to believe. Why? Because it shakes up their ideas, their notions, and it demands something from them that they don't want to respond to.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
Yes.
Karam, there was a question, right?
There was a question. Yes, Dr. Adnan.
I think you need to ask this question, but before this question, I would like to ask to just like say something about the beginning of the duration. Now, Matthew says after 6 days or about 6 days, and he mentioned the Transfiguration event, as if Matthew is making a connection between an event happened almost a week before the Transfiguration and the Transfiguration. And if we go back almost a week back before the Transfiguration, we see probably might be the most important question, the question that Christ asked his disciples: whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? Which is most important question, because all Christianity is based on the identity of Christ. So my question to you, Dr. Gini, I don't want to say more. What is the connection between this important question of this Christ to his disciples a week before Transfiguration and the Transfiguration event?
Well, I think you're exactly right. You know the answer, which is why you're asking me the question, because it confirms what Peter said. Peter said, when Jesus said, who do people say that I am? They said, oh, you're Elijah, you're Jeremiah, one of the prophets, you're John the Baptist risen from the dead. And then he said, well, who do you say I am? And Peter said, you're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And so this event proves that Peter's statement of faith was correct. And it was proven to them in the most dramatic fashion by literally revealing in a tiny way the glory of God that he truly possesses in his nature. So they didn't see his divine nature, but they saw the glory of that nature in the uncreated light. So yeah, that's what you were hinting at, but that you're exactly right. So that is the connection there. So it's confirmation of what Peter said and what Christians believe about Jesus.
And this point you mentioned before earlier at the beginning of your talk, when you said he wanted to show them his part of or glimpse of his divinity in order to make them stronger when before his crucifixion and before his passion, and that's why he wanted to tell them, I am who I
Yes,
am. I
yes.
am the one who I am, and that's why I will show you a glimpse of my divinity. So when you see me under suffering and under persecutions, don't afraid. Don't be afraid. Just like stay steady, because I am the one who chose to be under every kind of suffering by my choice. And that's why he wanted
Yes.
to just like comfort them
Yes.
and strengthen them. Now we come to your question, Karam Orlay.
Yeah, Karam,
Yes,
ask your question,
Doctor.
please.
Yeah, we have a question from Afif Demetrios. He always with us. Thank you, Afif, for your always being with us. His question is, did the transfiguration happen after 6 or 8 days?
Yeah, the Gospels are not one of the, sometimes some they say 6 and others say 8. And what is the reason for the difference in the time? Most commentators say, so I'm not going to choose between them, because that would mean one was right and one was wrong. Most commentators believe that the difference has to do with how they counted the days, because in the Jewish counting, you count the first day and you count the last day. Like when we say that Jesus was 3 days in the tomb, and everybody says, well, how is that possible? He wasn't 3 days in the tomb, because we're thinking of 24 hours, but they count the first day, Friday, they count Saturday, and they count Sunday. All of those count as days. So most commentators say that that's the reason for the difference. But other fathers like St. Gregory Palamas finds a kind of mystical explanation in the difference between the days. He says that the 6 represents the 6 people who were on the top of the mountain. That was Jesus, Moses, and Elijah, and the 3 disciples. And the 8 represents the 2 who were invisible, and that's the Father and the Holy Spirit. So that's more of a mystical interpretation. But I don't think anybody can say with certainty why one evangelist would say 6 days and the other says with 8 days. But I will tell you what Chrysostom would have said. Does it matter? It doesn't matter. We sometimes get fixated on these little tiny details, and that really has nothing to do with the event. So Chrysostom used to call those little insignificant. That's like saying, were there 2 angels at the tomb or just 1 angel at the tomb? He called those tamikra. In other words, insignificant little details. I don't think that has any significance per se to the story.
No, it does not actually. Especially we're talking about a great feast like Transfiguration. But Saint John Chrysostom, he gave like very simple answer. He said Luke says about 8 days, Matthew says about 6 days, because as you said, the way they are counting, Luke is counting the first day and the last day. The first day is number 1, the last day is number 8. So he said about 8 days. Matthew was counting the days in between. So those will be 6 days.
That's right.
So they are all the same.
So they are the same days. Yeah, both of them meant the same days.
Yes. Luke was counting the day that he was saying the number 1, and the day of
And
the
the last day,
Transfiguration, number 8. Matthew was counting
after so many days,
in between.
yes, they went up the mountain.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yes, I want to mention like one note while you're talking, Dr. Jenny, something like come to my mind. Did we see the full glory of Jesus Christ? For sure, the answer is no, because he showed them as their ability. Their ability is to see as much as he want to show them. So
That's right.
imagine, dear everyone, imagine what's the real glory of Jesus Christ when we be in the other life, living the real glory of Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Lord knows what the disciples were capable of. And that, by the way, that's kind of related to the resurrection appearances also. When he's on the road to Emmaus or he's talking to Mary Magdalene, they don't recognize him. And there's a reason for that, because they weren't prepared to recognize him. Other times he appears to the disciples, immediately they recognize him. Or when they're in the fishing boat, he's on the shore, they don't recognize him right away. So he reveals himself in the way that they are able to comprehend, and when they are able to accept that. So he knows what we can accept. If he was to reveal himself, to us the way we are, as imperfect and as sinful and as far from God as we are, who knows if we could tolerate it? I mean, in the book of Revelation, he appears to John and John falls over dead, Seriously, that's what would happen to us if we beheld even a small amount of the glory of God, because we're not capable of withstanding it. Like God says, no one shall see my face and live. Well, there's a reason. He's beyond, even the angels don't see God, So.
Yeah. Is there any other question, Karan?
We have very long question from Asad Bitar. He think like we can't separate the transfiguration of Jesus, as I understand the question, from the transfiguration of every human. Like he think like every human can be transfigured. So what do you think, Dr. Jenny?
Well, it is correct to a limited extent. What he's saying is correct. The point is that each of us is called to live a transfigured, transformed life. Each of us is called to acquire the likeness of God. So what Jesus is, what God is in reality, in his essence, we're called to try to imitate. So that's true, but of course we're not transfigured in the way Christ was, because Christ revealed what he really was. And what that is what we're supposed to be trying to imitate, trying to achieve. So he's already there, and he's always had it because he's eternal, right? And so there's definitely a connection, but we don't want to say that we're transfigured or we will be in the same way that Jesus is, because Jesus revealed what he really was, and we will never be that. We're just going to try to acquire the likeness of what is already inside of us as the image of God.
Also, Doctor, you already said before at the beginning, you say nobody will be able to go to heaven or enter to the heaven without the transfiguration. Everybody has to be transfigured.
Everybody will be,
so he can be entered to heaven. So
the human body will be transformed from, as St. Paul says, from corruptibility to incorruptibility. So in the next life we will have, if this is what the question is, yes, that is correct. All of us will have a transformed body. We will have an incorrupt body, like Paul says, what is sown in corruption is raised in incorruption. So the body will be different in that respect, but that's not what the transfiguration of Christ is about.
Of course, yeah.
But we will model that. So it's a foreshadowing of what will happen, that we will share his glory, but the transfiguration of Christ is not showing us how he died and then he became incorruptible, because that would be to lower him to our level.
Yeah.
You see?
Dr. Jenny, do you have any plans to have a trip to Michigan?
Oh, I would love to have a trip to Michigan. I don't have any plans to, but I would love to visit you. I'm hoping for COVID to go away.
We will be more than happy to have you here in Michigan. And what's your plan? Do you have any new books coming? Like we talked before about your Orthodox thinking Orthodox. Yeah,
Mhm.
but it's amazing book. Like
Thank you.
I gifted to many of my friends, and they like it a lot. But is there any plan for a new book?
Yes, thank you for asking. I've been working very hard on the next book, which should be out in the fall. I think you're going to find it very interesting. It's called, at least that's the title for now, The Crucifixion of the King of Glory. And it is about the Passion of Christ, but I'm taking it from every conceivable angle and trying to answer every question I ever had about it, which I've had quite a few over the years. But I'm trying to, because, why write another book on the crucifixion? There's lots of books on the crucifixion. But I'm looking at it from a patristic, we're using the fathers, of course, but also Roman law, what was involved in the crucifixion and the trials of Christ, the Jewish laws, and also the culture of Roman culture. I mean, we all know how shameful crucifixion is. We kind of know it intellectually, but we don't know enough about it. So I think that one of the challenges for us during Holy Week is that the stories of the Gospels are so familiar to us that we feel like we know it, but the real story is so much more powerful. It's so much deeper. So this book is talking about the medical side of crucifixion, the Roman culture, the Jewish. It takes us from the beginning of Holy Week through Christ in the tomb. So I think it's going to be, I hope people like it, but I think it should transform your your life in the sense that you'll have an appreciation for what the cross meant, in a way that we sort of have some idea of, but don't truly appreciate because of we're not in that culture.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting book because I was a listener for you years ago in the program
Mm-hmm.
Search the Scriptures, and you
Yes.
did like a beautiful series
Mm-hmm.
about the Holy Week, and
Yes.
you went through every step that Jesus went through, like the unfair judgment, the Wednesday, the Thursday, the everything. So I like that
Yes.
a lot, and it's like printed in my mind. So I
Yeah.
will wait this book to read it.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
have to tell you, the reason why I decided to make that my next book was because many people have told me that series on the trials and crucifixion of Christ, which I did in 2008, in the spring of 2008,
yeah,
for Orthodox Christians to prepare for Holy Week. By the way, you can find all of those lessons on at orthodoxbiblestudy.info. That's the site that has all of my podcasts. Orthodoxbiblestudy.info. It's very easy to find everything. It's all on one page. So I think the trials and crucifixion are on the left side of that page, and then after it's followed by 7 lessons on the resurrection. So because a lot of people really like those podcasts and listen to them every year, I said I should really write a book on this. So I wrote it in like a month, and then the rest of it took me 2 years. And I learned so much, I can't begin to tell you. It's so much better than the podcast. It's so deep. The things I found out are so amazing. I just
yeah,
have such an appreciation for what the crucifixion means, and so many different little things that we're just not aware of, but the early church was. You see what I mean? And so maybe in the future we'll talk about some of the things I learned about
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I think people will find interesting, and it'll be very, very informative for
For
them.
sure.
that will be a
That's
good
why
topic.
when I sent you the subject at the first time, like I asked you about the Holy Week, I felt like
Yeah.
it's connected to the Transfiguration because when I was reading about the Transfiguration, I said in my mind how this great person showed
Yes.
all of his
Yes.
glory to these people. And then after a
Yes.
week, they crucified him. How these disciples watching
Yeah.
this, who show the glory for the people, watching him get crucified and on the cross, it's not easy.
Yes.
For sure, it's
Yes.
not easy
Yes.
for them.
Oh.
Yes.
That's true. And you're talking about, say, Saint Peter, who is faced with, Jesus predicts that he's going to deny him. And he says, no, no,
Exactly.
no, I will never deny you.
I
He
don't
was
know him.
so
Yeah.
confident in himself. He was so confident, but then he did, because of his human weakness, because of his fear. But of
Yeah.
course, later that didn't happen. But that was, I think there are so many lessons there, but there are so many things, like, why did Judas throw the money into the temple? There's a reason for that. The tearing of the temple curtain. I mean, some things that puzzled me over the years, and I wondered, and I said, what about all those people who, there was an earthquake and they came out of their tombs? What's with that? So many interesting things, so many deep questions. The whole idea of what the Jews were expecting in the way of a Messiah. So I've been reading about this. I've been completely immersed in this for 2 years, and I'm driving my husband crazy because I'm trying to finish this literally in the next few days, so that can come out in November, so you'll see it in print. You'll have
I
a lot of
wish
time to
Can
read
I
it.
we will do something. Yeah, doctor.
Yes, doctor.
can I take the advantage of this opportunity and make a connection by asking you a connection between the crucifixion, which is the
Yes.
subject of your book, and transfiguration?
Yes.
Luke was the only one who mentioned that both Elijah and Moses were talking to Jesus about his exodus, which is his
Yes.
death. So what is the a link you can see between the transfiguration and the exodus of Jesus, since we're talking about the crucifixion?
Yeah. Well, because he was on his way to Jerusalem, where he was going to be put to death. And Exodus also reminds us, it's not just that he's going to die, that he's going to depart from this life, he's going to finish his work, but also the very word Exodus reminds us of Passover, reminds us of the liberation of the Hebrew people, which of course the crucifixion and all of these things happening at Passover is the Passover of the Jews is just a very weak foreshadowing of what would happen for us in terms of our salvation with Jesus as the Passover lamb. Oh my gosh. And the things I learned about the lamb, oh my God. And how they were slaughtered and how they were roasted and what this has to do with the crucifixion. It was so powerful and so deep. I'm really excited about this book, but that's how I would answer that about the Exodus.
And
Yeah,
also, Luke was very careful to tell us that it was not Jesus who was talking about his exodus to Moses and Elijah. It was Elijah and Moses who were talking
They were
to
talking to him.
Jesus about his exodus and he should what he should accomplish, that he should accomplish at Jerusalem, which means
Yes.
to me at least that Moses and Jesus and Elijah, as appeared on the scene of the Transfiguration, are part of the plan of the divine dispensation. They belong to the Old
Of course.
Testament, but when
Of
Christ
course.
appeared, when Christ came in with the human flesh, he combined the Old and the New Testament together. So those people,
That's right.
Moses and Elijah, although they belong to the Old Testament, they were working for Jesus' crucifixion. They were prophesying about, they knew
That's right.
by faith about Jesus, and they knew about his crucifixion by faith also.
Yes.
So that's why we
And
were
and
able to talk about his exodus, that he will accomplish, as if
that's right.
they knew the plan, and
Yes,
now they are
they
talking
did.
to him about the plan they knew already long time ago, many
And
hundred years ago.
you could add Abraham to that too, because
Of course, all the
Abraham
prophets in the
also
Old
knew the
Testament,
plan.
Isaiah, Jeremiah,
And so
Jeremiah, of
all of
course.
these things, they're part of the whole preparation of the Jewish people for the coming of the Messiah. And yes, it's also part of the plan, and that plan was set in place before the creation of the world.
Exactly.
The economia of God, it's mind blowing that it was put in place before he made anything. He already knew what would have to happen, that the Son would have to be incarnate. He would have to die in order to redeem us from our sin. So it's just the whole
Exactly.
thing is just
And if
blows,
we
it just boggles imagination. Yeah.
And if we agree that Moses represent the prophets and Elijah Moses the law and Elijah the prophet, that means Jesus is the fulfillment of the
That's right.
law and the
That's right.
prophets. And the law and the prophets
Yeah.
target or aim was
It
towards
is
Jesus. And now he is here,
fulfillment.
so they are accomplished
That's
and
right.
they are completed and they are fulfilled. So because that
That's right.
they reach the end in Jesus Christ.
Yes,
I'm done,
and
guys.
I don't know why I'm on this program because you guys have it all figured out. You're
No,
answering
I'm sorry.
everything
I just
better than me.
wanted to make a connection
No,
between
I
crucifixion
think
and the
you're
transfiguration.
exactly right. That's the significance is that he's the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. And the culmination of all of this, of the divine dispensation of the economy of God, is the crucifixion and resurrection. So it's like they're saying, yes, it's the time is almost here. But no, I applaud you. I'm making a little joke there, but I applaud you for your insight, for your comments, and that's a wonderful. It's wonderful that you're sharing this with everyone.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good, good. There is just one last thing before we end this show. When you talk about Peter and deny Jesus, uh, when you
Yes.
when you look at Adam and Eve and when they chose
Yes.
to live away from God, what's happened to
Yes.
them and to the
Yes.
humanity. Also, we see
Yes.
here like Peter, and he saw the transfiguration and he know Jesus and he saw what he's doing, but he denied him. That teaches us a lesson that without God, even if we know who he is, we can do nothing.
Yeah.
We will be
That's
away
very
from
good.
him. This is why when the
That's right.
power when the power of Holy Spirit come into the disciples, they changed. They become different people. They become from people hiding to the people that showing, they go to the death and they are happy. So this is the
Yes.
transform that's happened to them, that Adam and Eve lost when they decide to be away from God, and now the power of God bring this man who denied Jesus. He was with him all the time, but now he is everywhere crying in his name and preach in his name without fear, without anything. So to see the power of God, like it's amazing. It's amazing. So
Yes, and there's so many lessons from this, but the thing is, Peter, remember he was the one who had told Lord don't when the Lord foretold his passion, he took him aside and rebuked Jesus and said, "Don't let this happen. This mustn't happen to you." And we have the famous statement with Jesus, "Get behind me, Satan," etc. Um, because Peter, I think we sort of relate to Peter because he's acting the way a lot of us would, thinking that we can control things that are happening in this world, that are happening in our lives, that we are going to be able to make everything work out. So he's the one who has the sword, he's ready for action, and he finds that he's really helpless. And so what you mentioned is very true, that one of the things that he learned, and I think this is why Jesus allowed this to happen. He foretold it. He knew it would happen. He said, "Oh, don't worry. I've already prayed for you." So he allows this to happen to teach us not to rely on ourselves. And this brings us full circle with what we were talking about earlier about the need for prayer. So we have this tendency to think that we can handle everything. And then we don't really allow God to work in our lives. So I'll tell you one thing that St. John Chrysostom said. I wish I knew where, but my husband told me this because he was reading. He says, "You'll never believe what Chrysostom said." I said, "What?" He said, "God would do more miracles, but we don't let him." What a profound statement. Because he doesn't, sometimes people say, "Well, why doesn't God do this? And why doesn't God do that?" Because we're not praying for it. God is not just going to interfere. He doesn't interfere with our free will. But when we pray, we give an opportunity for God to work in our lives. So he would do more miracles, but we don't ask him. We don't seek him. We don't have the right attitudes of what we ask for maybe is something that is not appropriate for us. But that's something for us to remember. So Peter also had to learn that lesson not to rely on himself. And he
correct,
learned it.
correct. Thank you, Dr. Ginny. Thank you for this
Thank you. Thank you
tonight.
for
This was
inviting
a
me.
very, very blessing night, and we learned a lot of what the transfiguration mean and what the faith, our great faith
Yeah.
in Jesus Christ mean. We wish to see you again with many, many other subjects. Especially,
Hopefully next
I
time.
would, yeah, we would love to see you like with the new book, like when it was
Yes.
released. After that, we need to see you and to discuss what's in the book too. Uh,
Thank you.
Dr. Adan, you want to say anything?
No, I thought, hopefully next time, would like you to talk something about the Theotokos to us, probably around, about probably her, the presentation to the temple. And of course, we would like to talk about the passion of the King of Glory before the Holy Week next year, hopefully during the Great Lent. But hopefully between now and before the end of the year, would like to ask you to talk to us, at least one or two times about the Theotokos. I think
Well, that would
that's
be nice.
something
I'm not sure if
interesting.
I'll be able to right now. The parish here has started to meet again. The people have returned, and we're trying to get the choir going again. And they've asked me to come. The choir, they use the organ here at the church. The choir is a little weak, and they need the organ. So they asked me to come and help by playing the organ, because the organist unfortunately died during the COVID thing, and they have practices on Thursday nights. So one
Oh,
night I
really?
will make sure that I come and we talk. But I don't know how much until they're still looking for somebody. But that is my fifth job now. I was reluctant to do it, but they're begging me because they don't have anyone else. So
Right.
You
I
can
will
bring the organ
definitely
with you.
we will meet again, but not anytime really soon. Maybe in the fall,
Yeah.
later in the fall. Okay.
We will
Yeah,
be
in
in
the fall.
contact. We
No,
will be in
definitely,
contact. We will be in
definitely.
contact. That's fine.
We
That's
just
fine.
Okay. Very
we're
good.
trying to prepare you.
Okay. That sounds
Yes.
good. I will
Okay,
look
thank you,
forward
Okay.
Dr.
to it.
Ginny.
God
Thank
bless
you.
you in your
We
ministry.
wish you
Thank you.
we wish you to have a blessed feast of the Dormition.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I'm
Thank you.
counting the
Amin.
days.
Thank you.
Thank you
God
so
Amin.
much.
bless
Thank you.
you
Thank you.
too.
Karam,
God bless you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Dr.
bye bye.
Jenny. Leif.
Uh, I just want to say something for everybody who's listening now. We have a plan. We're thinking about something for the youth. We didn't decide it yet, but with your help, if you can push us to do it, we will do it. We are planning to do like a special meeting with only the youth of your children, starting from age, let's say, 12 up to 20s. That's fine. We will do it on Zoom, and we will do it with our attendance. Plus, we will bring some. We will ask some priests to come also with us who are interested in the youth. We will do like a special meeting to discuss about the faith, to talk about their questions, to give them some advices, and then we will do some uh, 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 like some type of challenges between them. We have many ideas to push the youth people to come to church, to participate in the faith, to be something in our future, because they are the future. They are the future of the church. They are the future of everything. So if you are interested on this, we want you to send us a message or an email, or send us on the Facebook to the Apostle for Jesus Facebook page, or to Karam, or to me, and our personal page. We want you to say like how many kids you have that you want to participate, and how we can contact you when we decide to do these programs. And I think this will be a very good opportunity for your family, for your kids to learn about our faith, to learn about the Orthodox faith, and also to engage with other youth people around, around the world, let's say, who speak in English. We will do it in English language, so everybody can understand each other. We will not do it in Arabic. So that will be a good thing for your kids. So please send us your information and send us your support to this idea so we can do it as soon as possible. Karam or Dr. Adnan?
You can end the show,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Okay. Thank you. And before we end the show too, we have on Sunday. What do we have, Dr. Adnan, on Sunday?
Oh, Sunday, the Arabic episode will be about the feast of the Dormition of the Theotokos. And starting the Sunday, the presentations will start at 10 o'clock time, Syria, Lebanon, and also at 10 o'clock will be 3 o'clock Eastern time and noon time at California time.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And we'll see you on Sunday.